Hi, everyone. Welcome back to CAHS Career Prep, where we talk all about how to get you ready for a career in arts, humanities, and social sciences. I'm Nicole McDavid, and in today's episode, we'll be talking all about bridging the experience chasm. To discuss this topic, we have professional Ashton Peluso here with us today. Ashton is a graphic designer from Nashville, Tennessee, now living in Huntsville. With a strong passion for art and design, she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Graphic Design with a minor in marketing from Lipscomb University. After starting out at a boutique branding studio in Nashville, she became a Huntsvillian and transitioned into freelancing for different clients and agencies. And as of this year, she is now working at the Bold Agency as their brand UI designer and loving it. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you
Ashton.
for having me.
And we're excited to talk about bridging the experience chasm. This is one that when I thought of this particular topic, the wording of it, I thought, oof, that might be something that students aren't sure even what that means. And so I had heard this idea actually listening to a podcast where they were talking about this idea of the student who is coming out of college and looking for jobs, and the jobs are saying entry level position and 3 to 5 years experience, entry level position, 2 to 4 years of experience. And so students were really struggling to figure out, how am I supposed to step into this role or even be qualified for a position when I don't feel like I have the experience I need to have. And so that for me really was something that we needed to address for students and give them a better idea of some different ways that we could help them in those areas. And so to start with, kind of give me an idea of, for you, what you see as that experience chasm.
It was really difficult and I remember that panic as a student. And I specifically remember this one night after one of my studio art classes, where I was like a little less in my design core classes. And so I spent like hours like making a carpet out of carpet samples in my art class. And I got back to my dorm and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, everyone has an internship and I feel stressed. And it was really hard. And something that I did, which I ended up being really grateful for, was I just emailed every single agency, anything within like a 50-mile radius, and just said, hi, I'm Ashton. I'm a student. I didn't say, hey, I'm looking for an internship. I didn't say, hey, I'm doing this and this. I just said, I'm Ashton. Nice to meet you. I got connected with a few of them. It was hard and awkward. And then eventually that led to me getting an internship. But I think looking at all those internships and seeing all those different 5 years of experience, 3 years of branding experience and agency experience is required, was very scary. And it helped by just introducing myself. And then I happened across an opportunity that didn't require that. But I think that if I didn't reach out to certain companies and just ask and get to know them, that it would have been even harder for me to kind of bridge that gap and meet somebody who had a space for me and who was willing to take an opportunity with me. So it was difficult, but I got through it. And something that I'm sure we'll talk about it later, that I always really encourage other people to do is to take any kind of opportunity that you see. Because even if it's something like in my field, for example, it was my aunt's friend has a company and they were starting a company. They need a logo design for really cheap. And it's like, I'll do it. I'll do anything. I'll be able to go to these interviews and say, hey, I have client experience. Hey, I know how to email. Hey, I know how to invoice, even if it's something so simple. And so I think taking advantage of those experiences really helped me like bridge that gap.
Yeah, that's great. And I think about that so much in the same aspects when even I was looking for my first job. When I went to get my first job just as like a summer position, I had absolutely no clue what I was doing. And so I essentially started just going into different small shops with a paper resume at the time, because I'm not going to reveal too much of my age here, but at that time we did not email resumes. So I would like go in with a paper resume and be like, hey, I'm looking for a job. And it was finally one place. It was a really small boutique type toy shop that agreed to interview me. And eventually I was hired there and worked there for a couple of years. And so it really is a lot about just kind of putting yourself out there in many ways, which for some students can be really difficult to do. And so when they're doing that and putting themselves out there and sending those emails, I like the fact that you said it is not always about saying like, hey, and I need an internship. It is about saying like, hey, I'm a student and here's a little bit of information about me, and maybe even connecting in a little bit of information of what you like about the company. Just making that initial connection, I think, can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I did that a lot of like, I just love your studio work. And like, I know that this position that you have online says 5 years of experience. I'm still going to introduce myself, because maybe in 3 years after you've followed my portfolio and you're like, oh, 5 years doesn't matter. You know, I can see that she can do good work if you just, you know, connect with the people on a personal level, I think.
And I think that's a great point that you bring up. When we talk about years of experience, I think that's really hard for students to quantify. What are some ways that they can think about that in even like speaking to a potential employer about things that they have done and being able to connect that to years of experience, even if it's not maybe years of experience as defined as like a actual year in a job position?
I think variety helps a lot, and might make up for that a little bit. With those experiences and opportunities that I took when I was a student, they were ranging a lot. I at one point took a like internship that wasn't an internship. It was an alumni who was an artist and he needed an assistant. And I ended up like fixing his printer. Like, even though that's not what I, you know, wanted to do, it was a few weeks, and I got to put that on my resume and, you know, kind of show that, sure, I've only had 1 year of freelancing experience, but I've done 5 different things. I've worked with agencies, I've worked with freelancers, and you're able to like kind of list that off, and it kind of helps with like, I've seen the variety of things that are out there. And I don't need the 7 years of experience in an agency because I've worked with multiple different types of people. I think that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. So when you look at internships and paid versus unpaid internships, there is some research that talks about how paid internships can be more conducive in a kind of leading towards an actual job position. Is that something that you have kind of thought about as we move forward with paid versus unpaid internships, the quality of them, in students looking for those internships? Or those things that you've kind of thought about, or things that maybe students should think about in taking them on?
I have a kind of unique experience where I did both. Okay. So I think sophomore year or summer after freshman year of college, I found an internship on Instagram. They were these 2 women that started a freelancing company, and they were looking for an intern, but they were about like 22, 23, and they had just started and they couldn't afford to hire anybody, like pay anybody. And so it was kind of labeled as a mentorship, unpaid internship. And I definitely think it's important for me to say that I was privileged enough to be able to take that because I lived with my parents during the summer. I was able to work a job that could help me save for that summer money. And I had the time and the resources to do an unpaid internship. Right. And I learned a lot from that. But as I got older and experienced companies giving you paid internships, I definitely feel like there is a level of investment that they have in you when they pay you. And they feel like they're investing in you, and they get excited that they're putting money towards you learning the company, like in ins and outs of everything. And in my experience, I learned a lot more from that one. I felt a lot more respected in that one, because it's hard to do an unpaid internship when you're a student because you need to make money. And if you're paying for college or you're paying for dorms or anything like that, you need a little bit of money to, survive. And so although unpaid internships and mentorships like that are very valuable, I think in this day and age, finding a company that's willing to pay you and it sees you as an investment, and could possibly give you opportunities to work there after you graduate, or to write a good recommendation letter because they're paying you to be there and to learn all this stuff and do important work.
I think that's great insight, because one of the things like for students is figuring out how do you navigate that. And so when students have taken on jobs that are maybe not necessarily aligned with what they're specifically doing because they are working through college, I think that's one of the things that students will come to me and say, on my resume, I have work experience, but I don't think it connects to what I'm actually applying for. So what do I do? So what would be maybe some advice that you would give to those students as far as that experience that they have? So maybe it's not necessarily directly related, but are there ways that they can actually connect that in? Are there some things that maybe they could do to help make it more connected, even if it's not specifically aligned with their major?
I would say one thing that's always helpful is if you are at a company or an agency or any type of job where you have a specific role that's not in your role yet, talk to the people who are helping you in that job and say, hey, I'm really interested in this. I know this is not my job position, but if I could sit in on a few meetings about this, or if I could get some advice or kind of like be mentored by you, that's the way to do it. Obviously, not everybody is in the same industry. But I also think, something that really helped me was finding that passion that you have for what you want to do and using it in your free time. It's a hard thing to do because students are busy, and if they're working, they're working. But knowing what's happening in your industry, doing it in your free time, in my case, working on fake projects, case studies to put in your portfolio, because you still really want to learn and you still really want to show how you can do things, but a lot of your time is being taken up in a different field. That was something that was very helpful, was like, I'm going to take this Saturday when I'm off of work and I'm going to work on graphic design and I'm going to do a project for fun. That helped me a lot.
That's great. What advice would you give to students who are entering the workforce for the first time, like as they're coming out of college, going into the job market? What are some things that you might tell them to do or might help them in getting that first job?
I would say to, really keep in mind during interviews and searching for jobs that you're also interviewing them. You want to make sure that it's something that you would enjoy to do every single day, that their pay or benefits are something that you find to be good or that seem worth it for the work that you're doing. And just take on that mindset of, I'm looking for a job and I want to find something that I really like. And if I don't the first time, that's okay. Wait another year, save up some money, enter it again, and now you have extra experience. The first job you get out of college is not your career, and you're not stuck there, and you're not having to put all this pressure on, I must get my dream job when I graduate, when I'm 21, because nobody has their dream job at 21. No. Nobody.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things I want to ask you about is, I know that you're involved in some different things as part of the work that you do at the Bold Agency. And you specifically came and talked at the Design Week event that we had at UAH this past semester. So one of the questions that I think, is important to answer for students is that, like, once they get that first job, besides just building your, role within that job, what are some other things that students should do in order to continue to build their experience or their network as they go through that role? Because, as you said, typically your first job is not going to be your last job. It's going to be one job in a series of different areas of your overall career path. So what is some advice that you would give to students to kind of build that experience as they're, working in that first job?
I would say, whatever city people end up in, there's going to be a community for them. And it's hard to get there, and it's kind of awkward. But an experience I had was I lived in Franklin and Nashville my whole life. And I moved to Huntsville about a year ago, a little bit longer. And I suddenly did not have community. All the people that I met in Nashville are in a different state. I don't see them every day. I have to find new work acquaintances. I have to network a little bit more. And it was really scary, but I encourage you that wherever you're going to end up, there's going to be something there. An example was Design Week, which is a week of free events for students and young professionals. And that really helped me meet a lot of people. Design Week was actually the first week I moved here. And so I came here and essentially stalked my current boss and was like, I really like her. I kind of want to work for her. And I talked to a lot of people. I asked their advice as freelancers, and people are so much more willing to help than you think they are. They're like, hey, there's, the chamber. This is how we find jobs. This is how we get our clients. This is how we invoice. This is how we do all this other stuff. And so get connected in those communities and fields, because most cities have a Design Week, and most cities have a chamber or a guild or something like that, and they're going to welcome you with open arms. And also something that I experienced was I had a lot of people in college that as I left who were struggling to find something that they liked to be a part of, and so they created it. And they said, hey, I really want to, have some kind of mentorship program with our university when the design students leave, that they have a mentor. And they're like, because I really need that. And they went to that board and they said, okay. And so then they had a design professional as they walked into the world that gave them connections and them connections. And so, you're hopefully going to find some kind of community. And if not, then you can start it.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any other last advice that you'd like to give our students, or any tips and tricks? You've talked about so much. This has been really great. But anything last that you would like to share with them?
I would just say be confident in who you are. And I know that sounds as cheesy as it is, but it'll get you a lot of places if you're confident about your skills and your abilities. And always ask for help if you need it. People are so willing to help. I've met so many people that are extremely passionate about helping other people that they were in their position. And so I would just say, ask for help, start something if you see a gap in there. And yeah, be confident.
That's great. Thank you so much,
Thank
Ashton,
you
for being here today to talk about bridging the experience chasm. Hopefully you've gotten a better idea of what that means, and it doesn't sound so scary, I think, in that idea. And we would also like to thank our sponsor, Blue Summit Supplies, for the wonderful facility that we are in and the resources to make this recording possible. A special thank you to our assistant media writer and researcher, Macy Morgan, video producer and editor, Jesse Hendricks, and producer, Grace Trutel. I'm your host, Nicole McDavid, and we'll see you next time for more CAHS Career Prep.